Aman, you graduated 3 years back, right?
3 years, yeah.
Yeah, done, friends. We are ready.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third edition of Fresh Out of the Oven. This is a lecture series that wishes to introduce to you some very dynamic young practices in the country that have taken alternate path when it comes to the practice of architecture and design. My name is Pratyush Shankar, and I am at SEDA, Navratna University. SEDA stands for School of Environment, Architecture, and Design. And today I'm going to be your host for a presentation by a very young architect whose name is Amin. Now, Aman was my student at SEP, and he's really fresh out of the oven. He graduated just about 3 years back. So he's amongst our youngest speaker that we have. And I've been observing his career very carefully. I did not observe him so much as a student. He was a non-discrete student. But I did I've been noticing what all he has been up to in the last 3 years. And also, of course, as a student, he was a very active kind of a student. But he has been really experimenting with his career at 2, 3 levels, which I found pretty fascinating. He has been collaborating with his friends, with his classmates, and they have formed an organization. They themselves have been kind of dabbling with many different things, many different forms of architectural practices. He himself is a very curious soul, and he has been running a film club, and I'm sure he will tell you more about it. They've done more than 50 film screenings, all over the country. And generally, he's curious, he's critical, he's interested, and has very clear thoughts on what is happening to the society right now. And I'm really proud. It's so nice to see our students doing well. And when we started this series, fresh out of the oven at SEDA Navratna University, I thought, let me call a lot of different practitioners. And Aman, the whole idea of getting you and others is for our senior students and students at large to see that careers can actually take different paths. So
Yeah,
there is
true.
this kind of a fixed notion of this is what architects do, or this is what designers do. But that is actually not the case. And architectural education actually trains us to be very versatile. And we are capable of having many different kinds of practices. And in some sense, that is the reason why we have called you. But before I kind of hand over the stage to Aman, here is a little formal introduction to Aman. So as I said, Aman is a graduate from SEP University. He is an architect currently exploring and reimagining the relationship between visual cultures and the built environment. With his keen interest towards collaborative practices, he co-founded Compartment S4. So that's a very interesting name, Compartment S4. That's their practice. An architectural collaborative with the focus towards sensitizing bottom-up approach to design. His role at S4 aligns with his interest towards reading and documenting cultural landscape to further design for the same. So that's his interest. Along with this, he co-founded the Nomad Cafe, a culture club for Ahmedabad that curates regional and parallel cinema from across the subcontinent and aim to further investigate the relationship between visual culture and the built environment. So that's Aman's introduction. So here we have somebody who is curious, who is interested in charting alternate path. And with this, I would like to invite Aman to deliver his lecture and talk about your journey, Aman. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Pratyush. Thank you for having me here. I think it's a really nice feeling to sort of be invited by a professor who's taught you back in first year. I think I'm quite glad this is happening. Obviously, I would have loved it, to visit the campus, but I'm still glad for this to happen online. So I'm just gonna share my screen now. Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So Yeah, thank you again. I'm just gonna straight start right into it. Yeah, so I'm going to start with a photograph of Ahmedabad. This is a photograph by Robert Stephens and how he sort of visualizes the city from a more aerial view. And I'm just going to take a moment here to talk about who I am and where I come from. And so basically, I've been born and brought up in the city of Ahmedabad, and I did my schooling, then went to School of Architecture at CEPT, and I'm currently living and practicing in Ahmedabad. So Ahmedabad, for the ones who know it, has a very unique yet strange relationship with the people that inhabit the city. And similarly, I have also had, through my years at CEPT and even later, my journey has been of one where I'm still sort of, defining and redefining my relationship with the city. So over the last sort of odd 100 years, Ahmedabad has been sort of a catalyst to very significant institutions which are often for national importance, CEPT, IIM, NID, Public Research Laboratory, and Kanoria Center for Arts, and Vikram Sarabhai Community Science Center, and sort of the list sort of goes on. And these institutions and really made me think a lot about my sort of relationship to the city and how I was affected by these, and what role do these institutes and organizations play in the building of a cultural landscape of a city like Ahmedabad. And also more personally, how does it sort of play a role in sort of forming the kind of citizen and the forming the kind of individual that I was going to be, and that I was going to contribute through. So this was something that had been going on while I was at CEPT, and Pratyush might remember this very fondly, because these are some of our photographs back from first year, and this is our old clay workshop, which is now no more. But so this CEPT was one of the places where for the first time I sort of learned how to work with people, and I understood what it meant to working along with people, and what the kind of impact that had. And I realized that a friend and I could have a absolutely different outlook to something very similar, and that was absolutely beautiful for me. And not just beautiful, but at larger scheme of things, it was also something that really was beneficial for to be able to achieve larger goals and to be able to achieve larger visions. It was important to come together and to be able to work together. So these were the sort of things that were basically going on in my head back when I was during my time at CEPT, and right about when I was about to graduate. And soon, so this is soon then my friend Kishan and I, then we both of us were running the SA Film Club for a few years, and the School of Architecture Film Club. And both of us were very sort of inclined towards films as a medium of art, and films also as the visual medium, how it can impact culture and how it impacts spaces. And this was exactly the time when we sort of started having these discussions about what it really means to run a film club, and what would it mean to sort of take this film club outside of CEPT. And CEPT was a closed community after all, and we started thinking of how what would happen if we take this film club outside this closed community. And we started these were very ongoing discussions between Kishan and I, that about what kind of engagement would the city have. And so that eventually we started brainstorming about it, and we sort of pointed out a few things that it was important for us that our intervention or our initiative had certain engagement with the city. It had, since both of us were primarily architects, we wanted architecture also to play a significant role in this initiative. And the art itself, the visual form of art, form of films, had to that was important to the initiative, and the people, of course. The people of Ahmedabad were the key in this initiative. And from this, we sort of came down to these sort of three key words which was a sort of inclusivity. We really thought whatever the space that we develop had to be inclusive in nature. It should invite people from various backgrounds, various fraternities, various cultural and economic and social backgrounds and age groups. It should actually be a space which is absolutely open to anyone and should be willing to accept anyone for who they are. And to be able to do that, we realized we would need a certain sort of informality to the space. And a certain informality would sort of instill this inclusiveness. And the most important thing, obviously, was to make it discursive. The space had to generate a larger discourse around films. And so this is what we had in mind. And soon then we formed the Nomad Cafe. So the Nomad Cafe is, if I would like to clarify, it is not a physical cafe because a lot of people confuse it for that. So Nomad Cafe is essentially, it's more like a traveling space, which is not, it's not, there's no physical space to it. And Nomad Cafe today is now a film club, primarily a film club that focuses on regional and parallel cinema that has been produced in India. And we sort of we get in touch with the directors, we curate these films, we get the directors to Ahmedabad, and we showcase their films along with the larger audience of Ahmedabad to sort of build a narrative and build a discourse around films. And these are the kind of spaces that we've been in. So we really wanted this was something very important to us, that we wanted the film club to have a sort of temporal nature to it. So we would within a span of 2 or 3 hours we would set up the entire space, and then right after the screening we would dismantle the entire space. It could be somebody's living room, it could be a dance academy, or it could be a designer studio, or it could be a cafe, and we would just set up impromptu sort of a screening, sort of temporal screening, and we would dismantle it right after the screening is done. And that sort of really allowed us to build on this inclusivity that I was talking about. That because the temporality sort of gave a lot of space for inclusiveness. So this is something that we really so Nomad Cafe right now is, it's been over 3 years now, and we've screened about over 50 films from various parts of India as well as the world. And yeah, we plan to go ahead with it. We've been planning a screening with Pratyush for a while now. Let's hope we can do one in Baroda sometime soon. So yeah, along with this, both of us are extremely interested in visual art and illustration design as well. And so we, for every film that we would curate, we would take it upon us to sort of to design illustration and a poster for the same. So I'm just going to quickly run through a few of the posters that we've designed. This is a poster that we designed for Teen or Radha. It's a film directed by Dargai and Dheer Momaya. It's a very interesting film, especially for architects, because it really it talks about one space, and it shows three different lives of the same space. And this film we had screened at Surya and Jay Kakani's studio in Ahmedabad. This is a Assamese film called Kothanodi. This is a poster that we designed for Bhaskar Hazarika, and the film we screened this film in a reptile park at Ahmedabad. It's called Sundarvan. This is the cult film Om Dar Badar, directed by Kamal Swaroop. This was screened at the LD Institute of Anthropology, which was designed by B.V. Doshi. This was again another very interesting film by Paramita Vora. This was this year, and we Unlimited Girls, and we screened this film at Studio 4000, the Smith and Kushbu studio in Ahmedabad. This was The Hungry, is a film by Bornilla Chatterjee. This was again at Surya Kakani's space in Ahmedabad. And this was a very close film to us, and we were very close to the screening as well. It's a film called Aankho Dekhi by Rajat Kapoor. And this happened to be our 50th film screening, and we wanted to sort of take it upon us to build and design and exhibit a small sort of retrospective to the kind of work that we've been involved in the city. So the screening and exhibition was at 079 Stories in Ahmedabad, and it's a art gallery based in the city. And we basically through the weekend we showcased these the kind of work and the kind of posters that we've and the kind of films that we've got into the city. So while Nomad Cafe was really the the my outlet towards how I engage with the city and how I interact with the city, and also towards visual art and films. I am primarily an architect, and was back then, back then when I graduated, I was extremely curious and extremely we all had a lot of energy just to get our hands on to something architectural. And so I'm just going to go back in time a bit. This is a photograph of us at our studio at SEPT. This is us back in third year, and this is sort of where our name comes from. We used to call this sort of alley compartment S4, and this is where it all sort of began. And we started discussing and brainstorming about what architecture really meant to us, what it would mean to practice in today's India, and what would architects represent when you say you're practicing in India. And we sort of started brainstorming these ideas back in thesis, and these were sort of three key sort of ideas that we came down to, through which we were planning to sort of go ahead with our practice. So the first being systemic approach towards problem solving. We all sort of believed architecture can be a tool to solve problems, but through our projects we wanted to make sure we do that, and also we wanted to make sure we do it in a more systematic approach. The second is large resultant impact, regardless of the scale. This essentially means the scale of the project really doesn't matter. It can be something as extremely small to something as big as a market or a urban scale project. But essentially, what matters is the impact that you create through that little or large project. Contextual programming aimed at activating spaces is essentially, this is also something that comes to us from while we were traveling back at SEPT. We were traveling across the country, and we would realize the amount of space that we have, the amount of built space that we have, and how contextual programming can actually just sensitive and contextual programming can activate a lot of dead spaces in any community. So these essentially were like the three key ideas that we had, and these three sort of became what our way of approaching a project, and that which was a bottom-up approach. And these three sort of became our holding ground for every project. So now I'm just gonna go through one of our projects. This is Lakdi Ki Kathi. This was a project that we did in Gurugram in Uttarakhand. This was one of our very early projects, and one of the first projects where we saw saw the project from acquiring the project to actually people inhabiting it. We were absolutely involved in every little step of the project, and this is a project very near and dear to us. So the project began with a lot of discussions with the community, with the local pradhan and local governing bodies and teachers at the municipal school. And the project was to eventually build an extension to existing municipal school. And here, since this was one of our own, this was going to be a sort, we wanted it to be sort of a specimen of how we sort of reinterpret vernacular built form. And these were the sort of materials that Uttarakhand and especially Gurugram and the region was familiar with. and they used to make vernacular forms through these materials. And so we realized there were three sort of main challenges while working in Gukam, and which we wanted to showcase how the locals could sort of tackle these challenges, and we wanted to showcase through this one little build structure that we are doing. So the first challenge was that Gukam was a water scarce zone, and we wanted to showcase how you can harvest water at such a small scale with extremely rudimentary technology as well. The second was Gukam was an earthquake prone area, and most of the houses were not earthquake resistant. So the idea was to sort of build this space using earthquake resistant technology, but in a way that you don't rely on a lot of modern technology. You still so we were trying to not use a lot of concrete in this process. And the third was the problem of the stone slates that were very common to the area, and these stone slates would start leaking after a point, and this was something that was a major concern for the locals. And through little experimentation and through adding multiple layers between in the roof, we had sort of figured out a way to sort of making it waterproof. And so these were the three main challenges that we wanted to address through the building, and this is how the building had come about. And this entire building was taken they basically we conducted this entire thing as a workshop. It was a construction workshop which was open to anyone and everyone who wanted to participate. So this was exactly when we realized how sort of small and insignificant our role here was, where we had 40 people working with us on the site, and we had this structure built in 12 days. So this is exactly when we realized that we are just one of these 40 people here, and everybody here is actually going to try to do their best to be able to contribute towards the towards making space more sensitive. So the workshop module really sort of allowed a lot of exchange between us and the people who were coming as participants and the locals. And there was a lot of exchange of knowledge banks, which we are quite grateful for. So now this is how the space is, the build form sits in its context. And yeah, this is how the space is. So this photograph is from we visited the site almost a year after the construction was done, and it was winters, and we had used a lot of techniques to insulate and thermally insulate the space. And this is when we realized that the kids would actually found this space warm, and they would want to sit here. So that sort of like little things like these were really sort of encouraging us to do what we were doing. So right after Gukam, there were a lot of inferences that we had, and there was a lot of discussions that came to the table. And during our time in Gukam, we had realized a certain gap between academics and practice, and these gaps were something that we have been trying to read through our practice in different forms through different projects. I'm just going to go through some of them that I think are important for students and practitioners also to not just know, but also in some way to accept these as gaps. So one of the first things is that academics is more of a imagined reality versus practice is a very need based and a very real reality. It's extremely real, and it impacts people directly. Academics tends to involve a lot of personal biases, and these biases can be in forms of your personal inclinations or a specific style language of architecture that you are more inclined towards. whereas practice needs to be as bias free as possible. In academics, the ownership of the project is solely relies on you. You are the creator. You are the sole creator. This is your project, and you are presenting it in front of a jury. Whereas in practice, the ownership is just as one of the professional consultants. In any project, there are a lot of consultants and not just professional consultants, but a lot of people who invest a lot of time and energy into a project. So the ownership really is of a certain percentage only. In academics, this is again similar to the previous one, is focused purely on designing, whereas practice is focused on for the focus lies in designing with knowledge acquired from other parallel knowledge banks. And these parallel knowledge banks can be anthropologists or sociologists, economists, and I don't know, MEP consultants or structural engineers. And you really have to rely on a lot of different knowledge banks to really to do what you would want to do best. In academics, architect is one that understands the client's need the best, and when you're sort of designing for a hypothetical situation, what you think is required is sort of the ultimate. Where in practice, architect is really just a medium through which the client really understands what they need, and architect is only a tool through which the client can help, and you can help the client understand better what they need. And this is just a quick diagram that I made just to basically understand the time differences that prevail in both. So basically, in academics, you would spend about 80% of your time in design, and you'd spend time sketching and making models and exploring and reiterating the same. And just 20% of your time goes into site studies and presentation. And whereas in practice, about this, the time to design is squeezed down to about 40% of and the time that the rest of the time is especially for site studies and budgeting, executions, coordinations, etc. That list just keeps going on. So these were the kind of inferences that we had, and we've grown after that, and we've done a few projects after that, and these were the kind of inferences and the gaps that we found. We kept looking for this through our practice and through the different kind of projects that we do, and each project that we do found a sort of a driving force to it, either through these gaps or through something that we would imagine it to be important for the project. So I'm just going to take you through a few of our other projects. This is one of our very early projects. This is the project that we all came together for. It's a project called the Public Ecosystem. It's situated in Bhat in Gujarat. Bhat is a semi-urban sort of a village, you can call it a town, right on the outskirts of Gujarat. Outskirts of Ahmedabad, and here we were essentially redesigning. The project was a public water body renewal of sorts, and water here really was the driving force of the project. We had to start looking at water in not just socially and communally, but also more geographically. And to be able to do that, we zoomed out to the lens of to the scale of not just the town, but to the city of Ahmedabad and to the district, and then to the state, and to understand how water flows and how water comes to this little spot. Uh, all of this obviously was we were constantly engaging with the community over there, understanding what they really needed from this public space, and sort of trying to do our best in that. So here we would just very basic things like grey water recycling plants were supposed to be installed. We were understanding how to modulate the land and topography around it to have a maximum catchment area. How dry waste composting works, and how we can formulate a system in which the community runs the dry waste composting. And this was the sort of tentative plan that was pitched to ODA, Ahmedabad Urban Development Authority. So the interesting thing about this project was that this was a project that we pitched for. This was a project that we found and we understood their requirements, and then we took it to the urban authority. And obviously, this is not classically how architecture works, and not how public projects work. So essentially, this project for us was a means to understand how the government works, how public projects such as these work, how tendering works, how the entire bureaucratic system behind this works, to be able to pitch for it. And it's been 3 years to this now, and we're still in the process of sort of understanding. And it is a difficult process, and it is a challenging process to sort of understand how these pre-existing systems work and sort of work your way through it. These were the kind of views that we had pitched at the urban authority. This was a model. So while Bharat was a project which sort of looked at topography and water and how government projects work. This is another project which it's called Pink Toilet, and it's essentially a very small toilet which we built in Falswadi in Pori district in Uttarakhand. And Pink Toilet essentially is a scheme. It's a government scheme issued by the central government of India to build safe public toilets for women. And these toilets are supposed to have a breastfeeding room and a sanitary pad dispenser and a lot of things that, and essentially make it well lit and clean and safe as possible for women. So here, this was a project where we, for the first time, realized what it meant to, sort of engage ourselves in a public and in a project that is going to be repeated in multiple places. But at the same time, we wanted to sort of contextualize it. We wanted to contextualize it to Falswadi and to the area of Uttarakhand we were working in. So this is how the structure was. We were essentially trying to sort of take inspiration from the local vernacular techniques that were there, and remodify them in a certain way. Um, yeah, and this is how the finished product looks like. And here, one another interesting thing was that we experimented with rat trap bonds. Now, rat trap bonds in brick is something very common in Ahmedabad, but for them in Uttarakhand, most people didn't know what rat trap bond was. So for that, we took a small workshop with the local masons to sort of teach them how rat trap bond works. Rat trap bond essentially, it saves on a lot of cement, and it also creates thermal insulation. So it's extremely beneficial when you're thinking of something that is going to be mass produced. And these are the kind of details we're working on. And this photo is actually quite interesting because this is exactly how we sort of envision this project to be. That this is a photo of the Falswadi district and Falswadi town, and that little pink dot that you see is what pink is the project is pink. That is Pink Toilet. And today, right after this project, we had made a manual of construction, and which was circulated with Sarpanch and Pradhans across districts of Uttarakhand. And today, at least about 4 or 5 of them have already made it on their own. And so, for us, this project really was about understanding how these government schemes work and how you can mass produce something that is, and at the same time, and that same thing can be well designed, and you can make publications and make manuals for them to repeat on their own. So this photograph, if you is obviously of Falswadi, but in our head, when you zoom out and when you look at Uttarakhand and a few more districts, you would be able to see this sort of small pink dots which would really be the essence of the project. This is another. This is a project called Ahmad. It's a mango market. It's a APMC mango market in Dharampur. Uh, this project was also very crucial for us to in understanding how real estate and economics works. And this project was a private project for a group of private developers. And for them, the success of this project obviously dependent on whether or not all these shops get sold or not. So our aim was obviously to create a space that was unique to the area, but and did justice to the requirements. But in also in some way we had to focus on the fact that all these shops had to be sold. So yeah, these are the kind of modules that we had made for different kinds of shop owners, and this is how it looks. And this is currently in construction, and essentially this project really taught us a lot about the importance of policy making and the importance of economics, and it was really cracked it down to numbers and figures to understand how you generate space. So here the space was actually generated through numbers rather than the quality of the space or the air or the light. So I think what is important was to understand these policies. Only if you understand these policies, you would be able to sort of work your way around it. This was another. This was a project we call it Nadi Ke Parvat. This is in Khadki. Khadki is an extremely remote village. It's possibly one of the most remotest villages we've worked in so far. And Khadki is right on the border of Gujarat and Maharashtra. It's right in the center of the Valsad teak forest, and it's something very interesting about Khadki is that a lot of locals here depended on teak as one of their main materials, and a lot of their knowledge banks and construction systems relied on teak as a material of construction. But a few years back, the government had banned cutting teak trees because of high deforestation rate, which was obviously good for the environment to ban it, but it had a sort of negative impact on the people. So the people here now did not know how to make their homes. They were sort of stuck with knowledge which was not accessible to them anymore. Um, so here we had collaborated with an organization called Sarvoday Trust. Sarvoday is a trust that has been functioning in this region for the last, I think, about 30, 40 years now. And they've been involved in a lot of livelihood programs and a lot of educational programs in the area. And since the last few years, they have been sort of encouraging people to grow bamboo. And their major concern to grow bamboo was to they were looking at bamboo as a material of craft, and they wanted they were sort of also teaching people to make bamboo crafts, and that was something that they believed would generate economy in the village. And we sort of collaborated with them to use bamboo and to showcase bamboo as a material that you can use for construction. So we wanted to build a small structure for them that could essentially, people could just look at it and understand how to use bamboo for construction instead of teak. So this is how the space was. The project was situated inside the Sarvoday Trust campus. The Sarvoday campus has about 200 students living at the campus. So our project was majorly of two parts. The one that is right behind the trees is we wanted to showcase like, how you use bamboo in two ways. So this was one was in a more frame structure sort of a way, and the other was how do you use bamboo to make a shell structure. So this is the frame structure. We had since they had pre-existing knowledge of how to use teak, and they were familiar with hip roofs. So this is how. So we had also made hip roofs. We had combined two hips to make one larger hip, but in bamboo. The details here were also extremely simplified. They were made in a way that locals could just look at it and replicate it. There was no, we were not reliant on a lot of advanced technologies or tools to make these details. We had to be very cautious and sensitive to the fact that the locals here will not have a lot of access to these tools, and every detail, every joint had to be designed in a way that anyone could do it. This is how the structure works. These are some photographs during construction. Can you see it?
It's a blank screen right now, Aman.
Oh, okay.
You have more slides?
Yeah.
You can share again.
Yeah, there is some issue. Sorry. Yeah, can you see it?
Yes, your screen has come again.
Okay. So yeah, basically this was the frame structure, and this is how it looked like. I'm sorry, there's some issue with the presentation at the moment.
Maybe you can move on to the next part if you wish. So it's all gone blank.
Yeah, it's all.
You can again try the PowerPoint. Let's see. Maybe you can skip a few slides.
There's some issue. There's some of the slides. I can see some slides and I can't see some. So. Okay, I'm just gonna run through it then.
Okay, just see. Let's see. Whichever we
Yeah,
can,
yeah, yeah,
otherwise we can have a conversation since you are there.
yeah. Just a minute. Satyush, what I'm going to do is.
You can, you know what you can do? This bamboo structure of yours, what is happening is it's not showing now. Yeah, if you go to slide 67, so maybe you can show photographs or something.
So yeah, I can head to our website and I can show
Yeah,
you
do that.
photographs from there.
You
Yeah,
can show some photographs and some project, and it's okay, no worries.
yeah.
The screen has kind of hung. Yeah, just show from your website these projects, and you can talk about it. It's okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm really sorry about this.
No
I'm just going
worries.
to
No worries. This is
show,
good. Very good.
yeah, I'm just going to show these projects through the website, and
Wonderful.
then I'll go back to the presentation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was talking about Nadi Ke Parvat. Basically, it's two of these different shell structures, and the one is the frame structure, another is this shell structure, and the shell structure had a bamboo weaving, and then it would have a mud plaster layer and cement plaster layer to sort of waterproof it. These are some photographs when the kids sort of had taken over the space and they started using the space. Yeah. Um, so going back, uh, so then the other project that I wanted to show is Resilient Homes Challenge. So this is a project that it was a competition hosted by World Bank, UN Habitat, and Airbnb. And the idea was to make a home in three different contexts and three different disaster-prone areas. So what we chose was. We chose was Uttarkashi, and our sort of disaster calamity that we had chosen was, according to Uttarkashi, it was earthquakes. So here the main idea was to build a home that really relied on a lot of construction knowledge and environmental sensitivity towards the area. And we won this competition, and we were invited to World Bank and UN Habitat, World Bank in DC, and UN Habitat in Geneva, and UN headquarters at New York. And our project has been displayed over there, and it was a really interesting experiment, because this was the first time we were sort of working with the kind in the space that we already knew about. So essentially, the structure was, the base was of Gabin walls, and the roof was a separate portal frame. So in the case of an earthquake, both of these structures would act independently. And at the same time, what was important was the environmental concerns, and how it had to be sustainable. How we knew how difficult transportation was in Uttarakhand. So to get one little thing, it meant a lot of energy being utilized for it. So for everything that we were now designing in this project, we were taking into account a lot of these things. And these are the sort of views that we had submitted and we to World Bank. And soon after this, we were also once we won the competition, but we were very curious to sort of experiment this and prototype this. And the competition was obviously only limited to it being it wasn't a built competition. So we wanted to get our hands on and really build the project ourselves. So we basically then started pitching this project to various rural authorities in and around Uttarakhand, since it was more um, sensitive to their area. Hello, Satish?
Yes, yes, Aman. There's some problem with the internet. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, so this is the project. This actually then took form, and we built this project in Kirsu. Kirsu is a small village in Uttarakhand and Pori district. And here we worked along with a self-help group. It was a women self-help group, and to sort of programmatically build this space. And this was sort of a very wholesome project for us because we were really involved in programmatically contributing the space, and till the point the client the self-help group actually took over. And so here the ground floor is basically a community kitchen which the locals use and the visitors come here to eat. And the upper floor is sort of an exhibition area that we have designed, and an exhibition that really talks about the kind of people in Kirsu and the kind of the culture and the heritage of Kirsu. So this is how the space was, and uh, yeah, the upper space was is this kind of a space where the exhibition really was important to us because this exhibition, through the process of making this exhibition, we were really involved with a lot of locals to understand, to really get into the depths of the stories behind the cultural heritage of Kirsu. And even for the same, we had also collaborated with a friend who was a new media designer. And this really sort of this project really became something that was very wholesome for us, where we in the end could build, not just build a physical space, but also collectivize a lot of these cultural memories and sort of folklores and tales, and sort of bring them all in one space, and sort of the villagers could sort of look at themselves in a new light. So this was resilient homes, and how it sort of translated to being a space like this. The next project I'm going to show is, sorry, you'll have to bear with me till I find the next project now.
No issues, Aman. We'll be having a good time.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, going back to the next project that I'm going to talk about is Sheer Plains. So Sheer Plains is a project. It's a very interesting and small project that we did. It's an interior project. This is a project where we started really thinking about how would a product really guide a space, and can a architectural product sort of become something that guides and sort of derives the space? Can you derive a space from the product? And also, so basically, if you see these two plans, this is a fairly small plan, and essentially this space was designed for a person who was involved in import and export. And the idea was to create these sort of, he needed two separate cabins and one conference space for himself, which was really not possible in such a small 600 square feet office. And which was really the case everywhere. Everyone, the prices in real estate are skyrocketing, and not everyone can afford spaces, large spaces for themselves. And also, conference room is a space that is not really used on an everyday basis, especially in his scenario. And so we sort of took upon this challenge in a way that, what happens if we can make this space extremely flexible in nature, so that he gets a space for himself, as well as he gets a space where, like a conference space when he needs it. So if you see this plan, there are essentially four tables and these two partitions. And this one partition creates this cabin, and the other essentially is designed in a way that it slides across the room like that, to make it a larger space. So it will be more evident through the photographs. This is how the space is. Um, I can quickly show you the video. So this is how the space is when you not sliding it, and once you slide it across, you get a large sort of a space that you can use it as a conference space. Yeah, so this was shear planes, and one of our main concern was that how would a product guide an interior space, and going. So I'm just gonna skip to the head to the presentation again. Can you see the presentation right now?
Not right now. I think we'll have to stop sharing this and then
Yeah,
share
yeah.
the PPT.
Yeah, so through all these different projects, we were constantly sort of discussing amongst ourselves, and also sort of drawing inferences from these projects about what it really meant to practice today, and and also one of the main thing was we realized how dependent we were on these allied fields of architecture, and these fields in our case, what is very evident is and one of them is environmental studies, and that is something very crucial to our practice. Another is structural design and construction, so which is also important to the practice, and another is anthropology, and planning and policy and real estate. All of these sort of are allied fields which have specialists, but are also in some way, an architect is also expected to sort of know all of this. And the classical ideal definition of the architect is really of the one who can can do all of this in one project. But this is where we sort of started thinking about, what does it really mean when how would one architect be able to do so much, and what would it mean to sort of expertise in one of this, and look at it and act as a plug-in to a architectural practice. And so linking it sort of back to academics, this is what sort of we keep thinking about, what would have happened if back in second year or third year, the one of us was more inclined towards structural design and planning and policies, and we sort of chose to pursue that further, or some of us were more interested towards material and research and we pursued that forward. Some of us would be interested in anthropology, environmental studies, and art, and you take that forward. And similarly, economics and real estate and construction, somebody might be more might be more inclined towards economics, but can still look at architecture through the lens of economics. And all of these were extremely important for any project that we would do. Or one could obviously absolutely be, if you can do all of them, then that's the classical ideal architect. But this sort of had essentially got us thinking about what it meant to sort of be a practice of 8 people, and what it meant to. So today, like, compartment S4 is a lot of these things. Compartment S4 right now is, a handmade. We do handmade workshops because we have people who are interested in construction and who can take that forward. Some of us might be more driven towards how we towards rural, and we understand how the rural is going to grow in the next few years, and we would take that up as well. And some of us might be more inclined towards research and academics, and hence we also teach. And some of us are interested in publications and writing, and making publications for architecture, and we sort of do that too. So this is essentially what sort of broadly we do, and it has a lot. And when you actually think of it, it goes back to the fact that we are 8 people working together, and we are 8 individuals who come from extremely different backgrounds, and we come together to create this. And yeah, I had a photo of all 8 of us here, but that's not going to come now. So yeah, we're essentially 8 people, and now that if I link it back to sort of where I began from, Nomad Cafe and Compartment S4, both of these practices are are in some way very crucial to understanding how collaboratives work and how people come together to create something larger than themselves, and and also like in, in some way or the other we are constantly sort of renegotiating our roles as practitioners today. And and there's something that when people work together, you can develop something much meaningful and much larger within yourself. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna end on that note, and I think I'm very grateful to the fact that I've been in the last few years I've been able to work with some very interesting individuals and been able to create some interesting work. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Aman. Thanks a lot for this. This is really wonderful, very wonderful presentation, a very honest view, and I think it kind of fits very nicely to our theme. So we're really trying to understand how people start off and what kind of ideologies, what kind of collaborations, and what kind of questions shape them.
Hmm.
And uh, uh, and I think there are a couple of points that I thought are kind of very interesting, and I will just mention those points. Like I quite like the fact that you are eight of you together, which is itself a rare thing, without fighting, without killing each other, which itself is a rarity these days. And also, you are eight of you, and you kind of also represent very diverse interests. But what I also like about the fact is how from the projects, and I'll come to your projects in a while. I think you're trying to kind of develop a constructive critique of the practice, and in the process also develop a kind of a constructive critique of academics as a feedback loop. And I kind of find that concern quite fascinating. Well, we do find architects with ecological concerns, with community concerns, right? But I think what I quite like in your presentation today is how you kind of your immediate experience while after stepping out from a university, a good university, and then still there are something that you felt can a university can do better, something can happen in a very interesting fashion. I found that part pretty fascinating. Just as a matter of discussion, I feel that one of the ways to, and you presented that binary of what happens in a university and what happens in a practice. I perhaps one of the ways to develop that model would be to not only look at how much time is spent doing what in a university, but rather what is the larger pedagogical method or larger objective of education in a university. So
Yeah.
then we are looking for example, if one were to throw the term that we wish to create an architect who is a lifelong learner rather than an architect who only knows how to do one job, then you posit that with the practice, that would be more interesting. So I
Yeah.
think right now, I found a bit of a kind of a simplistic binary there. That's
Yeah,
just a
yeah, of course,
presentation
of
of your
course.
professor. And if you look at the kind of objectives of academics, rather than the patterns of academia, I think there can be a very rich model, and you can really contribute as a very interesting kind of a feedback. I also thought there were some very interesting ideas. I think it's your concerns for ecology, your concerns for community, and the context seems to be coming out very strongly in all the projects. And I find that to be very sensitive. I mean, what I really find fascinating is two projects. One is I'm a big fan of the Nomad Cafe because, and in fact, I called you yesterday to say you must speak more about the Nomad Cafe because I think it has huge potential. I wish you had spoken more, but still you did speak a lot. Because when you take these movies to different places, uh, I mean, the kind of connections and the kind of conversations you have formed are very powerful. When you go to these 50 different locations, you're meeting new people, you call a director, you screen a movie, and then you talk about the issues of the movie. Man, this is something really huge. This is something that very few people are doing, going out there to the community, talking about issues. And I think the fact that we have done 50 of these movies, I love those posters. That just goes to show a kind of care and the kind of innocence that is only possible in this age. When sometimes as you grow older, this innocence will
I
wonderful.
hope that's not true.
And I think fantastic that you remake a poster for every movie and where you screen. So I think I found that whole journey fascinating. Then the second thing that really struck me was the fact that you won a competition or you send a competition entry, and you're not only satisfied with that, but you actually want to make a difference on ground, and you go on and find a site, find a client, and you go on to build your building. Now that's this energy of youth that I really appreciate. I mean, you guys are anxious to make something, to do something. You don't want to get comfortable with what you have. And I think I'm very proud of you and all your S4 compartment, S8, S4, S8, right?
Yes.
Gang, and 8 of you in this compartment, and then all of you and all of our students. So it's really a proud moment for me as well, as much as for all your colleagues who are not present here. So with that, these were my kind of little observations, and we can take in a few questions for a few minutes.
Sure. Yeah.
Who are in the
Absolutely.
Zoom room, my faculty colleagues, they can just type in their question in the chat box. People who are uh, watching this on YouTube, our students can type in their question to Shalini or Pragya, and they will WhatsApp it to me. And so, we will just wait a few minutes and see if there are any questions. So there
Yep.
is already there's already a question from one of our students, and the question is from a student known as Jeet Shah. Uh, what drives you to work on vernacular materials? I think perhaps what he's trying to say is why have you chosen vernacular materials to work with? What do you think is the value of that? If I understand the question correctly, Aman.
So, very honestly, what we do is not stick to essentially vernacular materials, but we sort of understand what is contextual and what is local to the place. And most
Right.
of these vernacular techniques and materials are something that have been passed on generation to generation since the last decade, a few centuries, and that really means a lot to us. I mean, if it's like a family recipe that is being passed on, and you need to sort of preserve that because it doesn't only have benefits. It's not just like good looking, but it also has a lot of environmental sensitivity to it. And but today obviously you have to look at it in response to the economics and in response to the policies and general economic concerns. So our we are obviously extremely driven to working with as many newer materials as we can, but in the end it really boils down to what is right and what is appropriate for the space.
Yeah, I think that's a very, I like this analogy of the family recipe. Quite an interesting analogy you're using. I had a very specific question, and and I was just wondering what next. What is it when you have a group like this? Obviously, there are many opinions what you should be doing in future,
Yep.
and I'm asking this question more as having seen many practices, many collaborative practices that start together, and they try various different things, uh, and then some of them pursue one thing, some of them keep pursuing many things. So one of the questions that really comes to my mind is that what is your strategy right now as a group, or do you want to? So what I'm seeing is you're trying out various things. You're trying out publishing, you're trying out research, you're trying out handmade, site-based practices, competition, film. So it's great because you're still young and you want to try out things. Why not? So I have really two questions. One is how do you how would you like to address the question of depth? One of the kind of, if I were to play the devil's advocate, one of the the problems sometimes with such model going on for many years is that it can tend to become less in terms of the depth, and it can tend to be all over the place.
Sure.
So how do you wish to address that? Because this is more, and I'm saying this more as again as your professor. Uh, uh, because you're doing so many things? And secondly, what are the plans for the future?
So, very honestly, I don't think I would have like one clear answer for this, but I think we all sort of believe that we I think all believe in hard work, and hard work sort of pays off, and that's what we're sort of in it to do. And depth in terms of and I think it's more of an organizational challenge of how do you organize yourself, and how do you manage a practice such as this, so that your projects don't start suffering, because it's highly possible when you have a practice which is so complex in nature. The impacts on projects can be seen, but on the other hand, the advantages are also significant. When you have a practice such as this, a lot of things can be handled in a much more sophisticated and a more organized manner. And yeah, I think depth of of the kind of work that we get into is really something that I think only time will sort of tell whether we're in it to do it, and we're sort of trying our best to just be at it.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that. That's, I think, a very honest answer.
Yeah,
But
I
this is
this is
something that this is not something specific to you. I mean, this is something that I also keep asking myself, and even in
yeah,
my
yeah,
office. And this is something we have to keep asking ourselves,
exactly, yeah,
because
yeah.
the moment we lose track of that, it is very easy to kind of get into this thing. So I mean, it's more coming from this kind of a concern that when you are doing so many things, like in our office, we keep saying, well, let's not do a few things, but let us do the few things we should do really, really well. So that's where these
So,
thoughts.
so in our case, the things that we do are already or like a shortlisted version of the things that we want to do.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the kind of things that we would really want to do is the list is actually extremely long, and almost
yeah,
not really feasible.
yeah. Okay, so there's some more questions coming up. Um, so there is one: how has your engagement in areas other than pure architecture helped you as a practicing architect? For example, Clay Club, or the fact that you were, also running the movie club um, at SEPT. And then this person goes on to ask, well, why should students engage in these activities other than focus on academics? Well, my answer to this student is these things are very important, but Aman is going to answer this from the horse's mouth.
Uh, so I
That's what the
wouldn't say that
presentation is all about.
I wouldn't say you have to involve yourself, but
Correct.
see, I think what Pratish, you and a lot of other professors at SEPT also, we've all, I think this is something that was very, prevalent at SEPT, that, architecture is only one of the things that you do, but you gain a lot of inspiration and a lot of your input. The kind of, information that you gain is really from what you're surrounded by, and
Correct.
that could just be music, or it could be films, or it could just be looking at people, and that's something that one would have to sort of find for themselves. um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would really, I think architecture is a profession where you really need to look at a lot of things. You can't look at architecture in isolation ever.
Totally, totally agreed. And I think this is such a strong message, because that's one thing that I've been kind of off repeating myself in every forum when we meet our students to be doing
Yeah.
lot many things.
Yeah.
And it is a healthy thing. It is a positive thing to have
No,
clubs.
and especially when you're students, it's important to try out a lot of things, and it's important to fail also.
Yeah,
And I remember doing theater, and I absolutely failed at it. And
yeah.
so
You were good
so
today, though.
but sorry.
You were good today. You were good today.
Yeah, no, but like truly, I was involved in Natakbazi, and by the
Yeah.
end of it, I was just the light boy. And but that was an interesting learning experience. That okay, this wasn't meant for me, but it was still something interesting for me.
Yeah, sure, true. I think that's an interesting question. There's one more question coming up. That now this is, since you've worked in context-based architecture and you spoke about vernacular material. So this question is, how do you draw the fine line between the materials of use, the vernacular material, sustainable material, and not so vernacular material like concrete? What are your points? What are the
Um,
points to consider? So
So this is obviously something that will differ from this is a much larger conversation, and
correct,
about sustainability. Sustainability does not necessarily always mean it's not about the material always. It's also about how you use the material, and it's also about where you're using it, and how sometimes it's also about how far the material is coming from, and what are the kind of energies that are going in actually using the material. So if right in the middle of Ahmedabad, I decide to build a bamboo house, and I'm procuring bamboo all the way from Assam, it's not going to end up being sustainable.
correct,
I might as well build a house in brick and concrete, and because that is the skill set that is available, that is the material that is available here, and I think this is a ongoing global
yeah,
debate of sustainability. And so I
correct.
don't think we are no one, we are absolutely nobody is in this. We
This is a
cannot.
classic trick question that is asked always.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think about concrete? I remember I was in a seminar 2 weeks back on vernacular architecture, and so there's always this thing about concrete that pops up. We must get Gurjit to answer this question. I'll take a last question here. So this is
Yeah.
from Preet, one of our fourth year students. Uh, Now that's a very interesting question. How to approach a client and get a project which is in very remote location like Uttarakhand? So very simple. This is a very straightforward question.
Straightforward.
कि आप ये बताइए कि how do you get these projects from all the way from
So okay,
Uttarakhand?
like very
And in case,
honestly,
how do you handle these projects from here? So how do you reach these places?
so Uttarakhand or any of these remote areas, one thing that we were very sure about while when we came together was we did not want to sit and wait for a project to come to us.
Right.
And this was something that was common across all eight of us, and we were just extremely energetic, and we just wanted to do something, and we couldn't help and ourselves. We couldn't make a space for ourselves and sit and wait for a client to knock on our door. And especially the kind of work that we wanted to do, the kind we wanted to get into the public sector, and the public sector meant urban as well as rural. And so for that we knew we had to be out there. We couldn't possibly sit and wait for it. So even in urban areas in Uttarakhand, it was through a series of events. We just ended up in Uttarakhand. We started talking to this Pradhan. We understood what he needed, and that's how it sort of came about. And similarly in Khadki, similarly in Gurukham, everywhere it's always an interesting story about how we reached there. But what is important is that that these clients are never going. These clients, most of them don't even know that you exist.
Yeah.
And there are the amount of architects that are being graduated today. We don't need so many architects. We really don't, and most of them are just centered in the city, doing whatever they can to run a house. But we really need architects. The amount of architects is the balance is not there. I think a lot of architects choose to be in the city for obvious reasons, but there are a lot of projects. There's a lot of construction and work that is being going on across the country, which is absolutely done without any architects.
Correct.
So our concern was, if we just why should we just wait for a project to come to us where we could go to the project?
Great. I mean, I think this is very well said, and I think what Aman is also trying to say is that I think the one thing that is really a big take home for all of you is that you create your projects. You don't wait for the projects, and I think I've noticed that all good public projects in this country happen by proactive engagement, by where architects go around proposing projects, and that's not only true for their practice but for many other practices. So thanks, Aman. Thanks for this, wonderful, wonderful presentation. Your website presentation was even better actually because you have a stunning website. It was better than your PowerPoint. Bigger pictures.
Yeah.
So there was no problem. It was a happy glitch that happened, if you ask me, frankly. But you spoke very well, very inspiring. For
Thank you
some,
so much. Thank you for having me here.
yeah, and as I always say, I'm very proud to say that you and all of you, my students, and I've done great work with trying everything. and I can only wish you all the best. And
Thank you so much.
that's all I can say. And thanks for agreeing to
No, absolutely.
make this presentation and say hi to all your team.
I will. I surely will.
Yes,
Yes.
so thanks a lot, Aman. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Uh, a wonderful presentation here, guys, and I think really very encouraging to see somebody so young uh, uh, making so much sense. I mean, obviously, young people make a lot of sense, but actually applying that idealism, and everyone, when you're young, you're very idealistic, but then how many people are actually able to apply it, tinker around, make mistakes? I think that is you need to be able to take risk, and I think it's really phenomenal to see the kind of work that Aman and all his friends are doing. So I'm really happy that he was able to make it. And with this, we come to the end of this particular third series of Fresh Out of the Oven. We will be meeting again next Tuesday and not Wednesday, and we will listen to Sonal Mithal. That is on August 25th, Tuesday at 5 p.m. Until then, bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.